The big story that has been there this week is the resumption of flights across the country. It's happening in staggered manner. For instance, Kolkata will happen on the 28th, but for a lot of other places, limited flights have begun. It has had its teething problems. We saw lots of people being upset with their schedules because of flights being cancelled. Joining me now, Vinod Kannan, who is the Chief Commercial Officer of Vistara. Thank you so much for speaking to Hindustan Times. I wanted to just start by asking you, it seems, just reading the SOPs, Mr. Kannan, just seems that it's a very difficult thing right now. Everybody is scared of the disease. Everybody is scared about what it means to be in proximity with someone. And so for all of you to organize it at a time when even not organizing it or not being in business is also financially, literally, being very, very detrimental to your business. What is it like for all of you?
Firstly, thanks, Sunetra, for having me and for having this chat. Yes, we've been on the ground literally for 2 months from the 25th of March. So like you might know, and like with any business, it's very tough to restart businesses in the first place. And especially in aviation, which is so highly regulated, and there's so many rules and procedures, even on a good day. You can imagine that when there's an additional constraint of COVID and a health perspective, of course, there will be even more additional requirements for all of us to adhere to. So let me break this into two parts. The first part, which you mentioned, is financial. Yes, for most of us airlines, as I'm sure your colleagues and yourself have covered as well, there are certain cash outflows which are going to happen regardless of whether we fly or whether we're going to sit on the ground. Lease costs, aircraft costs, administrative costs. So all these costs have to be incurred in any case. So yes, it has been a big burden, I would say, not getting any inflows. Because as you might recall, the Indian government also said that we can't take bookings till we have some clarity on the issue. So in effect, we were essentially just stuck for the last 2 months. But let me also look at the social / personal / emotional aspect of this. There are people who are stranded in different parts of the country for the last 2 months. We know of cases of parents in one corner of India, kids in the others, the grandparents in the other part of India, because this just happened so suddenly. There was no time to process and actually arrange for movement. And therefore, I think there's also a human aspect to this, which is, for example, you must have seen a story of a 5-year-old kid who traveled alone on the first flight. So that gives you an example of the magnitude of the problem. Yes, it is not easy. It is not a cakewalk. It is not a walk in the park. There have to be additional guidelines or procedures to be followed. But let me also assure you equally that the fact remains that the best way to get from point A to B in the world today, the safest way remains to be by flight. Now, I'll tell you why that is true. One of the big issues that has come about is because of the entire environment in the aircraft, where you're sitting down in an aluminum tube.
Yes, Niti Ayog's Vinod Paul told me that he's very concerned because of the pressurized cabin.
That's right. So on that aspect, I think different aircraft manufacturers and airlines have come out, and we are no exception. So let me tell you what is happening actually. Every time you sit on an aircraft, the air which is inside the aircraft gets recirculated. So air is pulled in from outside, fresh air, which is at minus 50 degrees, where many organisms cannot survive. They are pulled in, they are filtered through the aircraft, and then they are recycled again. They are rotated out. New air, fresh air comes in. That's one part. The second part of it is every aircraft, modern aircraft of today, has what we call as HEPA filters. These are high particulate efficiency filters, which effectively can block microorganisms, including the coronavirus. So 99.9% of all particulates are stopped by this filter. The third point in our defense is also that when you look at the aircraft, the airflow actually is from top to bottom. It is not moving from front to the back or back to the front. So when the air is flowing in that direction, the chances of contamination because of this closed cabin is lower. So these are some things that the airline business has always had. So the chances are lower. That's what I'm saying.
But Mr. Kannan, the thing is, we are told social distancing means that you should have 6 feet, 3 meters between two people. So if you have 6 feet, you can't possibly have that in an aircraft, even if you don't have someone in the middle seat. And about the middle seat, Supreme Court yesterday allowed some airlines to continue with occupying the middle seat. So how are we going to have social distancing?
That's a good question, Sunetra. But the fact also is that if you look at the SOPs which have come out by the Ministry of Civil Aviation, which I suppose are also in consultation with the Ministry of Health, every customer, every passenger who sits on the aircraft has to wear a mask, right? That is throughout the duration of the flight. In fact, without a mask, you can't even enter into the airport. The secondary thing that we are doing as a second layer of protection is that we are giving all our customers, Vistara, for example, is giving all customers an additional mask when they board, as well as a face shield. So, according to various health authorities, having this double layer of protection, a mask and a face shield, should reduce the chances of infection to a very small extent. Now, yes, I completely agree with you. There is always the element of risk. There is always going to be a risk in today's environment. I think the point that I would like to make is that as an aviation community, we've tried to make sure that we've taken all possible precautions to prevent the chances of infection.
How are your people doing? I mean, wearing those PPE suits. I mean, we've really heard from the doctors and healthcare workers about how uncomfortable they are. People can't go to toilets.
Yes.
Can you share with us what it's been like for them?
Yeah, hats off to them. It's not easy. You're absolutely right. Remember that the doctors and the nurses in the hospitals can wear very light garments below the suit, whereas our crew have to wear the uniforms, which is probably more cumbersome. So, yes, it is even more cumbersome for our crew. The good part is that we're trying to make sure that the actual flight time, we're only doing domestic flights. So, at most, it's about 2 to 2.5 hours in each direction. So, you have to be in those suits for perhaps about 5 to 6 hours, and after that you can discard them in the right way through biohazard disposables and so on. Yes, but it is a concern. We are trying to look at whether there are alternatives which are as safe but a bit more breathable. I mean, the fabric being a bit better for the crew to operate and function. So those are things that we are doing. Also, sorry, just one other point, the number of touch points with the customer. For example, in the past, if you traveled on a Vistara flight, you would get a sumptuous meal, you would get food, beverages, you would have a chance to chit chat with the crew. So all that is gone. Unfortunately, those touch points are not there anymore. So while that is very sad for us, but I think it's an important
What do you
consideration
mean,
for
no
us.
chit chat?
You can imagine if someone's wearing a mask and a face shield, and the crew is wearing a mask and a face shield, it is not exactly very conducive for you to have a very pleasant conversation. But I think health takes precedence, takes priority. And we've started a campaign, in fact, to say, let's try and make flying safe once again.
So people should be adding how much from previous, like if you're going Delhi to Bombay, from previous experiences. Okay, you added an hour before, you landed at the airport hour and a half before, and then as soon as you landed you went home. Now can you, to that Delhi Bombay flight of 2 hours, how much more time are you adding?
Let me start from the time you leave your house from the origin point. So, firstly, we've sent out messages to say customers should come into the airport at least 2 hours before. So, even before 2 hours is fine, but at least 2 hours, because it takes that much amount of time to process and go through the terminal itself to get to the boarding gate. Of course, there are other requirements as well. You need to make sure that you are in a fit health. You should not be running a fever. You should have the app which the government has been circulating, or you should have a declaration form. And every customer at the time of check-in, we are making it mandatory for them to give us all their contact details and a declaration that all these information is true, for example. So we don't want to we want to make sure that the customers are in good health. So that's one. That's going to take you 2 hours instead of last time you could rush for a flight, say 1 hour before, and you can get in. On the arrival part, it's pretty much dependent on what the state government or the airport imposes. In some cases, there's a health check, but at the end of the day, every state is also changing policies. So even the policies that are updated on our website, which we are linking customers to, at the end of this interview maybe are outdated, and there might be something
Yes.
that comes up. So unfortunately,
Yes.
it's the new norm. Uh,
Yeah.
you know, I know also that customers are very anxious to move from one point to the other, but there should be no compromise on safety. And I think the regulations and the state government's mandates on what rules have to be followed, we will try our best to comply.
Vinod, Kannan, thank you so much for throwing light on this very, very complicated issue. And hopefully, it shouldn't be as cumbersome and we all get back to traveling and being in touch again. Thanks very much for speaking to us.